Hello again, this is Will Luden, your host with Revolution 2.0, a revolution of the heart. And as you know, perhaps you know, we are transitioning the title of this podcast to Take 10 with Will Luden, a much more obvious connection between what we're doing, which is learning how to improve our lives, the lives of our communities and our nation, and tie that to the title, Take 10 with Will Luden. And we are about making ourselves, our communities, and the nation better. Today's title, Enough is Enough. Now for more specifics about more gun control laws. And together, and you've heard me say we're approaching it, together we are at episode 400. Enough is indeed enough. All tautologies being true. But it's an empty phrase. It's right up there with do something. Unless the people in groups shouting these sentiments, enough is enough, and do something, unless the people in groups shouting those sentiments are willing to do the following, nothing's going to happen. It's all grandstanding. So, thing number one, detail exactly what changes need to be made. Be specific. Work through how they would be implemented. For example, get rid of all guns. Okay. How would that be implemented? Outline how these changes would produce desired results. For example, broadening background checks. What would that do? What shootings would that have prevented? What types of shootings would that prevent? In the future, accurately define terms like assault weapons and be clear about what you want to ban or further restrict. Thing number 5, stop using phrases like, we need gun control. We have gun control. Imagine if somebody came to you and said, we need traffic laws. Well, we have traffic laws. Say what you mean. We need more and better gun laws, if that's what you mean. But don't say things like, we need gun control, clearly implying we don't have any. And we do. And stop the accusatory, self-righteous cliche wars like Republicans want to save fetuses and kill babies, and Democrats are fascists who want to take your guns and control your speech. 6, stop making need an argument against gun ownership. No one needs an AR-15. Very few do. But then again, no one needs a vacation home, a sports car, a $500,000 annual income, or a 3,000 square foot house. Be very, very careful about giving the government the power to control because it decides to control or restrict because it decides you don't need something. Remember, do those things. Are all not holding up a sign that says gun control or shouting enough is enough or do something is just empty posturing. And I'm not about empty posturing. And I don't think you are either. So let's get into some specifics. And again, we're going to start with abandoning things like, Democrats are fascists and Republicans want to kill kids. Not true. And all it does is dig both sides in further and make sure we're not going to make any progress. Second thing is to come up with clear, truthful definitions. I'm for banning assault rifles. Spoiler alert, the AR-15 is not an assault rifle. And if you disagree with that, prove me wrong by listing the armies, the countries that have armies where semi-automatic rifles capable of only semi-automatic fire, are the main rifle for their ground forces. Real assault rifles used by real armies can fire in a semi-automatic mode, but they also have burst mode. Semi-automatic mode, pull the trigger each time you want to fire a round. Burst mode, pull it once, fires 3 rounds. And they're capable of fully automatic fire. Pull the trigger, hold it down, and it keeps firing until the feed mechanism has been emptied. These are not subtle changes. These are not, minor changes, we can dismiss them. These are fundamental changes that separate a civilian semi-automatic rifle from a true, by golly, assault rifle. Imagine for a moment you had two Ferraris. One Ferrari was a real Ferrari with a Ferrari engine, and the one next to it looked exactly like the first Ferrari, but it had a Volvo engine in it. They both are Ferrari style, but the first Ferrari looks and operates like a Ferrari. The second one looks like a Ferrari and operates like a Volkswagen. So let's not intentionally or through ignorance call the AR-15 an assault rifle. The AR-15 is a small caliber, high velocity, semi-automatic rifle. And if you want to ban semi-automatic rifles, say that. At least that way we can have an honest conversation. Semi-automatic firearms are capable of firing a round each time the trigger is pulled. Almost every civilian handgun in the U.S., whether it's a rifle or a handgun, rifle or a pistol, are all semi-automatic. Perhaps most importantly, we need to decide if we want to do the easy work of arguing and posturing, yelling cliches at each other, or do we want to do the much harder work of making things better? Here's some solid suggestions. Number one, until new gun laws or better enforcement of current gun laws or some combination stop all school shootings, allow staff, teachers and staff in schools on a volunteer basis, the ones who want to carry and are willing to be trained and retrained and retrained and constantly retrained, allow them to carry firearms in school, along with trained school resource officers, the ones who are actually willing to go into harm's way to protect their students. This is our children's first line of defense. Why would we not want that? Why would we say, keep all guns out of schools? Because between now and when some enforcement of current or new gun laws stops all school shootings, that answer, volunteer staff and trained and willing school resource officers, are our children's first line of defense. 2, raise the age for buying any semi-automatic rifle to 21. By the way, you can't rent a car till you're 21. And in some places, I think it's 25, but I know it's at least 21. So why are you allowed to buy semi-automatic firearms at 18? Speaking of enough is enough. Enough with the argument that you can carry a firearm. By golly, you can carry a firearm in the military when you're 18. So why can't you carry an AR-15 as a civilian when you're 18? We're comparing apples and basketballs. The military is a highly disciplined, structured environment, and especially with firearms. And there's no comparison between using a firearm in the military and being able to wander around town with an AR-15 when you're 18. And if you're male, perhaps there ought to be some sort of a huge additional tax when you buy a semi-automatic firearm. This is not a proposal, this is a question. And before you go, whoa, Will, that's sexist. Automobile industry for decades, ever since I was first driving, charges more for young male drivers than it does for young female drivers, because young male drivers cause more accidents. And we know that young males with firearms cause more killing. 3, implement effective red flag laws with tight restrictions and close to zero chance of abuse. Well-formed and well-implemented red flag laws will save a lot of lives. But let's make sure it doesn't bleed over into angry ex-spouses and angry neighbors just trying to take revenge by invoking a red flag law against somebody they just don't like. Broaden the requirement for background checks to include gun shows. I would exclude things like giving one of your guns to an immediate family member, but broaden the background checks. And impose a mandatory 7-day waiting period for the purchase of any semi-automatic firearm. Anybody who wants a firearm ought to be able to plan ahead at least a week. All of this will yield positive results, but very limited results. Basically, small potatoes. The main driver behind young male mass shootings is the same cultural shift that is behind blacks killing blacks in inner cities. It is the rot in our culture that creates fatherless homes, the entitlement mindset that excuses and encourages everything from retail theft to mounting government subsidies, regardless of the capabilities of those being subsidized. We are turning our backs on being rooted in an external, powerful, and inherently good moral compass, both as individuals and as a nation, be that God, Aristotle's teachings, or the Golden Rule. Respect for properly constituted authority is giving way to different levels of anarchy, be it the real anarchy as exemplified by, say, Antifa, or the mini version exemplified by students who are getting away with being disobedient, disrespectful, and violent with their teachers and administrators. Student defiance and disruption is surging at the very same time that academic performance is deteriorating. When I was in 6th grade, which was quite some time ago, there's an incident that burned in my memory, not because it was memorable by today's standards, but because it was memorable by those standards. Back then. Back then. The teacher had to step out of the room, and the class cut up, threw an eraser across the room, and bounced it off the back of a student's head. The class was shocked. When the student came in, she addressed the offending student, and after a while, peace and good order was restored. Today, the incidents that children remember are violent. It's not an eraser that goes across the room. It's a bullet. Why the difference? We didn't have as many guns then, but we had a lot of them, tens of millions, even then. What's the difference? Families, where parents are in charge. Respect for authority, adherence to a moral compass, and the conviction that education and training plus hard work over time are required for success is the bedrock of civilization. Without these things, we will continue to see the deterioration of the American culture as exemplified in school shootings and almost everywhere else. But we're concentrating on the school shootings right now. I recommend the gun law changes in this episode, and perhaps others are necessary. I'm not saying because the culture is deteriorating, we don't need to change gun laws. Change the gun laws. Do what we can there. This will result in welcome change, but only a surface change. And applying those gun laws will be a little bit like painting over rust. We must return to the basics of a successful civilization we just outlined. Yes, new, better, fair gun laws. Define things the way they're supposed to be defined, have an honest conversation, and do the best we can there. That's actually the easy work. Changing gun laws is not the hard work. Changing our culture, changing our mindsets, changing how we approach each other. That's the hard work. But as with everything else, it's the hard work that yields the much greater results. And perhaps most importantly, we are no longer saying, if it is to be, it's up to me. We are screaming while pointing to billionaires and politicians, do something, you do something, help me, save me. It is never them. It is never them. It is always us, you and me, together. It's us. We all have the first responsibility to take it upon ourselves whenever we want to affect change, whether it's in personal relationships, in schools, firearm use, COVID, climate change, whatever. And speaking of personal responsibility, that does not stand alone. The two main principles at Revolution 2.0 are, number one, personal responsibility. Take it, teach it. And number two, be your brother's keeper. The answer to the age-old question, am I my brother's keeper, is always, always has been, always will be a resounding yes. Be your brother's keeper. So where do you stand? What are you going to do? What are you going to do in areas like reducing the killing in our schools, reducing the killing anywhere? What are you going to do? Remember, it doesn't matter where you stand if you're not going to do anything. And you can start by taking positive action today. Subscribe, encourage others to subscribe with you. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, click that bell so you'll know anytime we come out with a new video. And always give us good reviews and give us likes. And whatever you do, whatever we do, do it in love. Without love, anything we do is empty. This is Will Luden. Talk to you next time.
You've been listening to Take 10 with Will Luden. If you've enjoyed the stimulating, passionate, and relentless reasoning, we encourage you to get out there and do something. Follow Will Luden and learn more at willluden.com.